Imagine you find a parallel world in which everything is perfect, but in order to stay, you have to sacrifice your eyes and your life. And this is the basic premise for the film Coraline, developed by Leica Studios and based on a novel by Neil Gaiman. Now, as a kid, I was obsessed with this movie, and after I rewatched it, I realized that not only is it still one of my favorite movies, but it's also one of the best movies of all time. The plot is well written, the themes are interesting, and the animation is such a wonderful sight to see. Now, of course, this doesn't make the movie perfect. Coraline herself is quite abrasive and cold in the beginning, and this turns to be resolved. And not only that, while Coraline is technically a PG-rated movie, the scares are very intense, and this can be shown in the way that the plot is written. The plot gives all these little unnerving clues that tell the viewer something isn't right with the parallel world Coraline is found, and this can be shown through the cover. When you look at the cover, you notice that there's a shadowy tree-like hand trying to grab at Coraline, and this was intentional. Hands are a very common theme. In a video by CZS World that analyzes Coraline's secrets, they noted that hands were a huge motif. Hands control Coraline's other father, a lightning bolt is in the shape of a hand in one scene, and tea leaves in the shape of a hand warn Coraline of the dangers. And the reason why hands are represented in this way is because they represent, quote, the other mother's control, end quote. Or to be more precise, how the other mother is trying to grab Coraline for her own ends. And another thing that shows that something isn't right in this world is in the other father's song that is sung around the beginning of the movie. Now, while this is technically not a very scary song by appearance-wise, it's very sweet and very short, you notice that something is very wrong when you read in between the lines. One video that analyzes the song by the fangirl noted that one line in the song, quote, tells this girl that they're watching everything she does, end quote. And what this means, essentially, is that everyone in this world does not have Coraline's best interests. They are watching her. They are trying to lure her into this trap the other mother has built for her, which adds a very subtle and yet very creepy tone to this very otherwise sweet song. And not only does the plot show really good clues, but it also shows really good character development. Coraline in the beginning is very cold and not very friendly to other people, and she completely changes by the end of the movie. She's very friendly and sociable and embraces the flaws in her everyday life. And this change in her identity is a huge part of the film's themes. Although the film's themes around identity is much less on the changes in identity and more on the fear of a lack of identity. And in the film, this can be seen through the other mother. She has one identity that we see, but it's shown that identity is false. The true identity is horrifying and really scary, and something monstrous. And one article titled An Eye for an Eye by David Rudd cites the parallel world, and by extension the other mother, as the, quote, right but not so right, end quote, world that is technically a double. And this causes fear because, quote, the double, of course, undermines our sense of individuality and is often seen to augur death, end quote. And what this means is that the double worlds are kind of playing on our fear on the familiar, our identity and who we are as people, and the possibility of the death of our identities, or the fear in that something is wrong in our familiar lives. And family love is another thing that is explored in the film, albeit in a much more twisted and disturbing manner. Coraline shows this through, again, the other mother. She is shown to be a loving maternal figure, but then is revealed to be a very horrifying monster that is trying to kill Coraline. As one movie review titled Cornered in a Parallel World by A.L. Scott puts it, Coraline, quote, explores the predatory implications of parental love, that the other mother is a monster of misplaced maternal instinct, end quote. And this shows how the other mother is a monster, not a mother. And this is all wrapped up in a beautiful work of art animation. Everything in the Coraline universe is handmade. According to a video Leica Studios produced that showed behind the scenes productions, things as simple as one piece of dialogue for one character required, quote, a drawer full of faces, end quote. And another thing, such as the garden scene, required about, quote, 3,500 flowers that light up, end quote. And this is all handmade to give a dreamlike, beautiful, and haunting quality to the film. But again, all these quotes and all these themes and all this artwork still has some flaws. Coraline, for example, like I said earlier, is quite cold and abrasive in the beginning, and this can turn some people off. One review by Herbert R. describes Coraline's character as, quote, unpleasant, complains as an attitude, and makes friends reluctantly, end quote. And this type of character, while uncommon and very refreshing sometimes, can turn some people off, as the movie reviewer stated that Coraline, quote, deserves it, end quote, meaning that Coraline might be a character that some people feel kind of deserves the punishment of the other world, rather than being seen as a victim that needed to be saved. And again, although Coraline does change, this happens a lot more slowly, and definitely more towards the latter half of the story, which might feel really slow to some viewers. As one movie retitled Coraline 2019 by the Massey twins states, quote, the pacing, however, is a little slow, and the production as a whole doesn't succeed as a family film, or even a children's movie to its unnerving plot, end quote. And this definitely shows throughout the movie's intense scares. There is a lot of implied and intended child murder, and every review states that some children should not watch this movie. And even the film had to change a huge amount of the film because it was very scary if they had followed the original book. One video by 8-Bit Frank that analyzed the original book and compared it to the movie noted that they had to make the film less dark by, quote, adding new characters so it feels less lonely, end quote. And despite the flaws and despite the fact that they had to make the film way less scarier to make this much more appealing to people, these scares are cathartic. And it's quite worth it, honestly. As the A.L. Scott article from the movie quotes, a film that elicits a tingle of unease or a tremor of spookiness can be a tonic of sensibilities dulled by wholesome, anecdoted, school-approved entertainments, end quote. So what that means, it's a way to control the scary visual narratives in something that is dreamlike and almost whimsical in a sense. And that's what the film succeeds in doing. It takes the scary parts, wraps it up in something whimsical and dreamlike, and makes it into something that everyone can watch. And its haunting narrative and childlike whimsy and its bright colors and haunting themes make it into something so beautiful yet so unnerving that it's quite a treat to enjoy despite the scares. And it's something you should try out for yourself, even though you're not a horror fan, or maybe. So the next time you're in the middle of the night and you're watching a movie, maybe turn on Coraline. You might be surprised about how the whimsical can be unnerving. Just make sure your dolls aren't watching.